It's the final warm-up session of this 2015 Blancpain GT season, and the sun is coming up here in Zandvoort, just outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands, and well, really beautiful morning, John Watson.
Thoroughly lovely. I mean, coming in this morning, driving along the coast, you could see there's actually, I mean, that was an amazing sight. There was a school of sea bass chasing crustacea, prawns and little crabs, literally at the water's edge. And I mean, what a pleasure in an early morning here in Zandvoort to see nature at its best. And there we have the sand dunes all around this lovely circuit, but 7.4 Celsius, I have to say, feels a bit aspirational to me. Felt like 0.4, not 7.4.
Exactly, but the lovely nature of Zandvoort is about to be woken up with the battle for the Blancpain Sprint Series title. Vincent Abril and Maximilian Buch have a 1-point advantage over Robin Freins and Laurens van Thor, and they will be starting the race this afternoon on pole position, whereas Freins and van Thor, or Robin Freins in particular, alongside Christopher Mies, will be starting down in 15th place on the grid. So really, it's Abril and Buch to lose now.
Yeah, I mean, it was a set of circumstances you couldn't make it up, really. I mean, after what happened in Misano and that whole swap of fortunes for the number one car, could it get any worse? Yes, it could, and yes, it did. Because into turn one, Robin Freins lost the benefit of the front row position he had alongside the Bentley of Max Buch. Ended up going into turn one, the tires and hairpin side by side in third place on the outside. And then all of a sudden, the back end of the Audi just literally swapped ends with the front. And we went, well, was he touched? Did anybody touch him? Was he touched by the 333 Ferrari? Every camera angle that we have seen indicates there was no contact. But we believe Robin Freins is adamant that he did get a touch. So it is a mystery. Maybe it was one of those things called an invisible touch. Yeah. Hi, Phil.
So this is how the team's standings are at the moment, and Belgian Audi Club have wrapped up that title, but the battle's on for second place, and the win yesterday means that Bentley HDP are now in second place in that championship, ahead of BMW Team Brazil, who were second, heading up to the race yesterday. So another strong performance, and that'll cement Bentley's second position in the Sprint Series title. But as I say, that's already been wrapped up by the WRT Belgian Audi Club. So we've already got some hardy fans here as well. It's just 9:20 in the morning here in Zandvoort on a busy day of racing. We've also got the DMV BMW Challenge and also the GT3 Cup Challenge Benelux to come. This is the Pro-Am Cup as it stands. Alexei Karachev wrapped up that title last time out in Misano ahead of Alexei Vasiliev. Marco Asma there in the third place, Christophe Bouchou fourth, and Lee Mole and Joe Osborne, despite only racing in that one event, ending up in sixth place in the Pro-Am Cup. And Mark Szolzicki did a race in Moscow, and Izzy Donchi raced here yesterday, and so he's picked up some points already from that. 9 points for a pole position and a win in the Pro-Am class. So just a couple of minutes till the pit lane opens, and these drivers will get out onto the circuit. What can they learn in this warm-up session?
I think, frankly, very little other than what they've learned over the previous 2 days of free practice and then qualifying and the sprint race. Track temperatures are going to be rock bottom. The track will be different. The ambience is going to be different when this principal race gets underway. The championship race gets underway at approximately 1 p.m. here in Zandvoort. The wind direction possibly might have a factor, but nobody's going to really have to make too many adjustments or alterations to that. So it's just little more than run the car, ensure that everything that when the car came off the tracks on Saturday afternoon after the last lap of that sprint race hasn't changed overnight. Racing cars do have a habit of mysteriously changing, but other than that, there's not an awful lot I think anybody's going to learn, because it is going to be an exceptionally cold track on tyres that are going to take 3 or so laps to get to temperature. You might just want to run your two drivers, cycle them through just to get them refreshed in case they're on the tiles last night out in Haarlem, Zandvoort, which they shouldn't have been doing.
Maybe even Amsterdam.
I mean, some of us used to go to Amsterdam the night before a race, but these are professional drivers, and you can just see the Lamborghini there, probably Nicky Katzberg.
It's Albert von Turner, Texas, actually.
There's Albert,
which is unusual, because he usually misses Sunday morning warm-ups to go to church.
Maybe he went earlier.
Well, yeah, exactly. Or maybe it happened I'm not 100% sure what time it has to be done, but
maybe he had an epiphany.
And realised he had to be at Circuit Park Zandvoort for the 20-minute warm-up session. So Albert's gone out there, as has Sean Walkinshaw, your own Blancpain there. 71 car of Marco Asma. There is Chaka Bueno in the 0 BMW, the number 2 Frederick Verviche car as well. Now, what are you expecting on the run down to turn 1? You've got Max Buch and Vincent Abril, but alongside them is the WRT Belgian Audi Club car of Frederick Verviche. He's not going to do anything stupid, is he?
No, I mean, I tend to be, the glass is half full rather than the glass half empty. And I like to believe that we'll see a fair and honest race. The misfortunes that befell the number 1 car in the sprint race yesterday afternoon, that's just something, that's life, that's motorsport. I do not anticipate anything underhand or, let's say, unsporting from anybody. This is motor racing, you've got to accept it. And if there were to be anything that would be considered to be outside of the sporting code, then I would hope it would be heavily penalised as a consequence.
There it is, Vincent Abril at the wheel as the number 1 car now of Christopher Mies heads out onto the track. He will be the man starting the car from down in 15th position. They are second in the championship. Also, they've still got a 19-point lead, or Robin Frantz has anyway, in the Blancpain overall Blancpain GT Series. So they should be able to, well, I say should, they've still got to start from 15th on the grid. So even if the Bentley wins, they have still got to manage to get up to about 8th or 7th positions in order to wrap up the overall title for Robin Frantz. So I think that's doable, considering the gap in pace we saw yesterday. You kind of had the top 4 and then everyone else.
I agree it's doable, but if you go back one race to Misano, we saw the number 1 car start in the pit lane, and it was making its way up through the field, and it came up against a car that ordinarily wouldn't be an issue, and that's where the contact occurred. So there's always a risk. You're at the back of the field, be it starting in the pit lane or starting at the back of the grid, making your way up, going past cars that you would not normally be in competition with, taking the risks, rolling the dice to try and mitigate as much as possible lost time. And that's going to be the task of Robin Frantz and Christopher Mies this afternoon. And they've just got to guarantee to themselves and to their team that they will push but not take an unnecessary risk. We saw the consequences of what happened when there were risks taken by Lawrence van Thor and Jules and Kowiak in Misano 1 week ago. Big accident, resulting, of course, in Lawrence van Thor's injuries and not being able to take part. So, caution in a sense, but caution with an element of entrepreneurialism, I suppose.
So this is Frederick Verviche that we're watching here. And he's in the number 2 WRT Audi, a quick racer. Raced in the Blancpain Sprint Series at the end of last season for in a McLaren for the Boots and Ginion team in Baku. And he does a 40.8 as he comes across the line and runs down into turn 1. We're not going to see fast lap times in this session either, because I imagine most of the teams will be running in their race spec, so heavy fuel loads and older tyres as we go on board with your own Blancpain, the man who has a driving school here, Blancpain Race School I think it's called, as he gets on the brakes into Tarzan. Down a few gears in the Rinaldi Ferrari. He's stepping in for Marco Seefried, who's racing elsewhere this weekend, and he did a reasonable job yesterday, Blancpain, but I don't think the Ferrari can match the Bentleys and the Audis around here.
Yes, he was racing in Japan with Patrick Dempsey.
So, are you saying, would you rather race with Patrick Dempsey or Norbert Siedler?
Well, it's a no-brainer for me. I mean, one's a racing driver and the other's an actor.
Frederick Verviche has done a 1 minute 40.8 then up at the top. James Nash has gone second quickest, and that number 4 car, the WRT car, was the only retirement from the race yesterday. And after Frank Stippler had some contact on the opening lap with Anders Fjordbach, and whether the contact was the damage or not, or whether there are other problems inside that number 4 car. They've had technical problems all season, it seems, in that number 4 WRT Audi. But Nash second quickest at the moment, Meerman off third quickest, and Christopher Mies has just gone quickest of anyone, but the time's not particularly representative. But we have had all 16 cars go out onto the track, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, everybody, as you mentioned, probably be on the worst of the tyres they have available. They will want to keep the best of the tyres for the 2 stints that they're going to have to face later on this afternoon. The other problem running at this time of morning, it is just coming up to 9:30, but nevertheless the sun is still quite low in the sky. And at certain parts around Zandvoort, and you're driving amongst the sand dunes are going to mask the sun, and all of a sudden you're going to come out of that mask and there's the sun right in your face. So it's another small hazard that you don't get in the middle of the day, early afternoon, when of course the sun's at its highest.
Absolutely. Here comes the 84 HTP Bentley, bouncing over at the wheel. We just saw Max Book in the garage watching on as Abril circulates, and it'll be Abril who will start the main race this afternoon. So it'll be up to him to duel it out with Vervish going down into the first corner. But the Audi team saying, you know, we're never going to beat the Bentley off the start because of the turbo engine. Is that the right attitude, or is that just realistic?
Well, I think that anything that's got a turbocharged engine, particularly the Bentley and the Nissan, the two that are the turbocharged packages in Blancpain this season, with that mid-range torque that you get with a turbocharged engine, as long as you've got the turbo spinning, when the lights go green, then you have got a slight advantage. Whereas a normally aspirated engine like the V10 and the Audi, its power is always going to be in the higher rev range, so you've got to be in that rev range. But it's just the torque. It's a bit like just rather than using a dirty analogy, but a diesel engine is all about torque, and it's the ability at low revs to pull very strongly, which a normally aspirated engine, you have to rev it to make it do the same thing. So turbocharged petrol engine has got very much similar characteristics to the diesel, and that has got that lovely mid-range punch. It doesn't necessarily have any more top-end power, but it's that mid-range punch that really enables you to shoot off the line and just gain that extra car length or so into turn one.
So up to Sky Vlak comes the number 1 car of Christopher Mies. And you say you wouldn't drive with it. Would you have driven with Steve McQueen? If Steve McQueen said, "Oh, will you be my teammate?"
No, he was a friend of Derek Bell, so under no circumstances would I have done that.
Well, that's got me, that. Christopher Mies then is lapping the circuit. Still Frederick Vervish, quickest man of anyone, 39.6, but pole position here was in the 36s. So,
I mean, Steve McQueen, in fairness, was a very accomplished driver. Finished second in Sebring 12 hours in 1970 with Peter Revson, and he drove, actually, believe it or not, Lauren Van Thor, I hope you're listening to this, he drove with a foot and plaster, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, really?
He damaged his ankle or something. So how he managed to change gear in a car that had a normal manual clutch, not an electronically controlled paddle shift on the steering wheel. But they made him tough back in 1970.
Yeah, absolutely. So across the line comes Christopher Mies, and it's a 1 minute 40.161. We go on board with Mies. There he is. And interesting to compare him and Robin Freitz's career, because Robin Freitz until this season had never driven a GT car. He was a single-seater superstar. Christopher Mies, until the start of this year, had never driven a single-seater. He started off in the German Toyota Yaris Cup, worked his way up through the order, always with a roof over his head, until I think it was the start of this year or over the winter. He did a one-off test in a GP3 car, and that was the first time he'd ever driven a single-seater.
Well, with the proliferation of one-make saloon car series, which are very cost-effective for a driver to get into, as opposed to going down the single-seater path, which is very much more expensive. So you can make a name for yourself in that kind of Toyota Yaris. I mean, the mind boggles at the thought of it, but nevertheless it is a championship and somebody's going to win it, and if you win it then you get recognition and notification and you can move forward. And it's, well, what a magnificent pair of hoons those are. They look like a pair of Great Danes. Not ideal letting them off the leash up in the sand dunes. They probably saw somebody in the mechanic thought it was a rabbit.
Across the line then, or into the pits comes one BMW, out of the pits goes the other BMW. It's the zero car of Sergio Cacabueno, that's making his way out of the pits. Purple in the first sector for Frederick Vervish. He's really getting into the swing of it.
Yes, and of course there's an enormous amount of expectation on this gentleman this afternoon, because he's on the front row of the grid alongside the Bentley, so he's getting the lion's share of the testing. And now doing purple. I wonder, has that car had a quick pit stop and a fresh set of rubber on? Because Frederick Vervish, well, if he's been pounding around, suddenly he's just got tire temperature, because all of a sudden purple, and he looks like he's about to improve on his current quickest time of 1:39.661. which he goes 39.166, so he makes up about half a second on that last lap.
Yep.
So he's getting the lion's share of the driving, as he will be starting the race, and it's best, certainly it's a man of going from where he would be normally in the pecking order of a grid. Now he's on the front row of the grid, alongside the guy that can win the championship from his team. No big ask, is that?
Is that going to give you extra? If you've done these laps and you've done 5, 6, 7, a 10-lap run in the morning, does that give you? Do you feel more comfortable coming to the start of the race when you're rolling up?
Absolutely. There's no question. I mean, you just get your whole body, your senses get back into the rhythm, the swing of what you had done 20 or a number of hours earlier, and then you drive onto the grid. The car is not unfamiliar to you. You've driven it in the morning. Okay, it'll be 4 hours before the cars go out onto the grid, but nevertheless, you've got that little bit of sense of what the car's going to do, the conditions of the circuit, albeit that by the time we get to the start of the race, ambient temperature will probably have doubled from where it is right now, and you'll be on a different set of tyres, which hopefully will be fresher with more grip. But it's the underlying sense of confidence that you're going to get from doing this. And if you end up quickest overall, which he may well be, because he's now almost a full second quicker than the number 1 car, Robin Freins, so you normally imagine that Freins would have been quicker in sheer speed terms than Frederick Vervisch. So it's all being done deliberately to give Vervisch the maximum amount of confidence and sense of, I can do this, I can actually potentially hold my own or take the lead of the championship race when the lights go out just after 1 o'clock.
So 8 minutes to go in this warm-up session, and as you say, Robin Freins has just got in the car now after Christopher Mies did the opening running in it. There's the 71 car, which is still in the hands of Marco Asma. He's been back into the pits and out again, but he's doing plenty of laps today, Marco Asma. And then we've got the Nissan of Craig Dolby in the 173 car. Had a good run yesterday, finished in, I think it was 5th position in the end, wasn't it? After troubles for some of the other cars, but I know they started to slip back, didn't they, towards the end? But
Sean Walkinshaw was having to defend fairly vigorously the position. He was under threat, and he ended up holding that position, but it was certainly down into this corner he lost out, because before I went down into Parc Fermé, he stayed over wide coming into the very tight, they call it the Hans Ernst chicane, and in doing so got onto the dirty bit of the track and got out of position and really just out-fumbled himself and lost the position as a consequence.
Nissan comes through the final corner, and it'll be Walkinshaw that will start the Nissan later on this afternoon.
Just listening to the Nissan coming round the Harry Lyondike curve, it doesn't sound like a race car, but in fact none of the cars here this weekend sound like race cars, because there's a maximum dB limit permissible. Oh yes, well held, that man.
Yeah, nicely done from Craig Dolby. And there's the 333 Rinaldi Ferrari. They've done their running for the morning. Jeroen Bleekemolen seems satisfied, hands in pockets. He doesn't look over the moon, actually. No, I've said that.
No, it's not a look of joyousness, that's for sure. But maybe we've done what we've done.
Yep.
And we're just got to go with it.
Here comes Robin Freins. He's done personal bests in the first 2 sectors, and across the line he comes to 1 minute 39.4, so just a quarter of a second off his teammate Frederick Vervisch's time. But now Nicky Thiem has got behind the wheel of the number 2 WRT Audi as well, and at the moment it's Audi 1, 2, 3 with Bentley 4th quickest with Maxi Buch. A good lap from Frank Stippler too, so although they'll be starting at the back of the grid as well, but Stippler will be on hand, I'm sure, to try and assist as much as possible. And that's the advantage that WRT have, is that they've got 4 cars, whereas Bentley have only got 2.
Yeah, I mean, it's the depth and strength of the whole WRT Audi operation. It's been there for years, since GT3 has become the championship, and they do a phenomenal job. It's not easy to manage a large number of cars, the logistics of it, and just keeping everything positive and not inter-team, inter-driver rivalries, which can often rear their heads and then cause problems. So an extremely well-managed operation. Interesting to see Nicky Thiem. He's been put into the car with just over 5 minutes of the session remaining, They'll probably get an out lap and 2 flying laps. I think Mayer Melnhoff looks delighted with that car. He's going to be driving, starting in 3rd on the grid. So curious to see just how quickly Nicky Thiem, who I would assume is inherently the more confident of the two and the one that's more likely to get in and nail it, rather than Frederick Vervisch, who you'd assume is more a kind of driver that's going to creep up on a lap time.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Albert von Turnen Taxis coming down towards turn 10, turn 9, sorry, and then into turn 10. This is at the far end of the track, at the furthest point away, where they've just cut away from where the old track used to run, and now heading down towards the chicane in this Lamborghini that didn't run particularly strongly yesterday. They had a trouble in the pit stop. Katzberg was doing all right in the opening stint, but considering they finished 2nd here the other week in the German GT Championship and were 3rd on the grid here last season, I think they were a little disappointed not to be right on the pace with the Audis and the Bentleys.
Just looking at the timing and scoring, interesting, the top 5 places, 4 of them are held by Audis, with the Bentley in 4th place. So you've got Nicky Thiem, Robin Freins, now Frank Stippler 3rd quickest, Maximilian Buch 4th, Philippe Salaquada 5th.
And then Ortelli 6th as well.
Yeah, yes, Ortelli in 6th. Are the troops circling around the campfire? And is it the Bentley who's going to be the...
Go on, finish it.
The analogy is going to get me into trouble here, I think. No, it's suddenly, all of a sudden, we're saying Bentley surrounded, whichever way you look, by Audis of one persuasion or another.
Yeah, there's Albert von Turnen Taxis, running nice and wide using all of the circuit. So less than 3 minutes to go. The Bentley's into the pits, so that's the end of the run for Maximilian Buch. That's the end of the session probably for Maximilian Buch, as we see Anders Fjordback there in 12th position. And he's got a fight on as well in terms of the Silver Cup, because that's the championship he's fighting over with Jules Simkowiak, but I imagine that Simkowiak has got a reasonable advantage at the moment now in the Sprint Series Silver Cup, because it was a great drive yesterday from Jules Simkowiak, and they are 19, and he is 19 points clear of Anders Fjordback. So basically a finish today is all that Simkowiak needs to win the Silver Cup. The only way Anders Fjordback, this man here in the ISR Audi, can win the Silver Cup is if Simkowiak doesn't finish and Fjordback wins Silver Cup, which sort of by default would happen. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it looks relatively comfortable into the championships, but nevertheless, things do change.
Absolutely.
In the meantime, Marcus Winkelhock, he's now found himself up to 5th. So you got 6 Audis and 1 Bentley in the top 7.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a message, or is it just me being conspiratorial? I know I'm a bit of a John LeWatson about this sort of thing. I mean, I don't wear glasses and look like George Smiley, but I sometimes think about it.
Should have seen him in Moscow. It was a nightmare. So across the line here comes Anders Fjordback, and it's a 1 minute 41.8. So that's 12th position for Fjordback. Indy Donci's just got in the Mercedes SLS and has gone up to 13th quickest. Blekemolen, slowest of anyone, but he only did 3 laps out there in the 333 Rinaldi Ferrari. We've seen them all season not really tend to bother with warm-up. Don't really feel that they can get much out of it.
Well, I mean, often teams, I remember on occasions when I was an active driver, you had a 30-minute warm-up session, and you would, of course, obviously it was more simple in those days, you'd do whatever you did, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and if you were fundamentally comfortable with the car, park it.
Yeah.
And also, of course, there are some people in motorsport, team principals, who every lap they run, that's £1 or 1 lap more than they needed to spend money on. So instead of going into their own little personal pot, it's money that's being spent. So another mile on an engine, another mile on a gearbox, going to cost. And a lot of people, we qualify a number of people within motorsport have that mentality.
Yeah, absolutely. So here comes the 75 car of Salaquada to the line, and the checker flag comes out and warm-up is over. And it is Nicky Thiem who set the fastest middle sector. Didn't improve on Frederik Vervisch's time, but Thiem has got the pace as well, as you'd expect in that number 2 WRT Audi. So it's Audi first, second, third, fourth, fifth, with then Bentley in sixth, then BMW 7th. Salaquados drops down to 8th place. So good luck from Attila Abreu there to climb up the order a little. This is Attila Abreu that we are watching now, coming into the penultimate corner, and it's not a very quick lap, this one, and no personal bests for him. So he's obviously hit the peak of the tyres and gone up to 7th position as he comes out of the final turn, followed by Robin Freins. Personal best in sector 1 for Sergio Jimenez in the other BMW Team Brazil car, the Zero car, that's heading through the middle sector now. But there is Robin Freins, second quickest in warm-up, and the frustration for him and Christopher Mies must be massive after yesterday, because they've clearly got the pace, but they're going to have their work cut out today.
I mean, just looking at the Audi pits, and those are long faces. They're not the normally relaxed and happy faces that you see in the Audi pits. So it really has taken such a dump from the outcome of Misano 1 week ago, and then the events of yesterday. Robin Freins finding himself spinning Tarzan hairpin, whether there was contact or not. Robin Freins, I think, is clear that there was, but there's no evidence that we could categorically say yes, there was contact. So it's really, a lot this afternoon to be lost and won.
Yep, absolutely. We've got the Blancpain Sprint Series and the overall Blancpain GT Series, and you can certainly imagine a situation in which they are shared. So Buch and Abril win the Sprint Series and Freins wins the overall series. It certainly is something that is more than possible, and would
a bit of smoke by any chance.
Maybe someone ran a bit wide.
Yeah, it looks like there's dust being kicked up down at Skylock Corner.
Yeah, a big old plume of white smoke back there, wasn't there? So
they've got a funny grill on the front of it. I think that's...
Oh my goodness.
Now what's that all about? A big lock-up like that?
Yeah.
He has been off. He did that to get any of the gravel that was in the nose of the car, the front of the car, to shoot it out the front. I'm assuming that's why
but
that
you can't,
happened.
Usually you can't lock.
Well, you shouldn't normally be able to lock an ABS, but I don't know whether they're carrying an extra grille on the front of that BMW. I don't remember seeing that on any other occasion. Maybe I've never noticed it, but just suddenly it stands out like, this is the most obvious.
Well, that 77 car locked its brakes accidentally in Misano when it was under pressure from, I think it was Mirko Bortolotti in the Lamborghini Huracan. That's how Bortolotti got through, because the 77 car locked up and went straight on at turn 5. So I wonder if there's a bit of an electronics problem with the 77 BMW Team Brazil car, or whether it's a result of an incident, as you say.
Well, there's obviously, we saw a load of dust up in the air.
Audi.
Yeah, yes. Bit of a, yes.
Audi Fest here in Zandvoort, as they look to try and take the Blancpain Sprint Series title away from the 84 Bentley team, Vincent Abril and Maximilian Buch. They are 1 point ahead in the championship going into the final race of the season, with 25 points up for grabs. Attila Abreu and Valdeno Brito 7th. Caca Bueno and Sergio Jimenez are in 8th position at the end of that warm-up session, and Indy Donchi managed to get up to 10th place in the end in the Mercedes SLS, ahead of Simkoviak and Van Splunteren, Walkinshaw and Dolby. The other Audi there in 13th place of Michael Markussen and Anders Fjordbach. Then you've got the 71 car of Marco Asma and Roman Mavlanov. Von Turnen, Texas and Katzberg didn't do that many laps, and Bleekemolen and Siedler only did 3 laps. There's Robin Freins back in the garage after his run out there, and he's clearly happy in the car, but a lot of work to do this afternoon, because it'll be Christopher Mies who will be starting from 15th position on the grid, and he'll need to, needs to get past the Bentley somehow that's starting on pole position. Is the fundamentals of it for the Blancpain Sprint Series title, even though the gap is just a point.
Yes, I mean, it's an enormous task, the number one Audi's got to undertake, and unless for unforeseen events occurring, which can happen, as we saw in the turn 1 as we look back at the highlights of this warm-up session. But anything can happen. Motorsport is not a predictable It's not like football where you can predict the outcome.
Absolutely. And no, it certainly will be interesting to see how things transpire this afternoon. Do make sure you join us. 1 o'clock local time is the race start. So what's that, 12 o'clock in midday in the UK, and we'll be on air about half an hour beforehand to bring you all the action and reaction from the grid before the racing gets underway. There was Frederic Verbies. He was looking very quick and ended up setting the quickest time of anyone in the warm-up session. The 70 car of Alexei Karachev, who's already the Pro-Am champion, was out there as well. Craig Dolby dancing with the Nissan, and Albert von Turnentaxis running out a little wide at times, but pushing things right to the extremes of the track. Great stuff from Albert. But it's Frederic Verbies who ends quickest after a good run in the number 2 WRT Audi, but it's going to be the championship fight that's going to be the one to watch. The Blancpain Sprint Series title and the overall Blancpain GT Series title, both set to be decided this afternoon. Race gets underway at 1 o'clock here at Zandvoort. It's Bentley versus Audi. You better join us.